We are live, we are broadcasting. Hello, everyone. Just while you're getting settled, a very, very warm welcome to the State of the Sector report and the insights that we've gleaned from the last year, how charities can adapt in 2025's challenging fundraising landscape. My name's Kayleigh Philps. I'm joined by two friends, Owen and James. We'll do formal introductions in just a second, but just while everyone is getting settled and ready and comfortable, it's good to do a little bit of housekeeping. So if you have any comments, questions or queries, please feel free to make use of the Q&A and the chat features. We'll try to keep an eye on them as we go through. We've got our colleagues, Naomi and Lewis in the wings, so they'll be monitoring them as they're coming in. We might have time to get to them at the end, but if we don't get to them at the end, what we can do is post up a follow-up piece where we answer those questions and queries. I think it's really important to note as well that our time and our effort and our energy is really, really valuable. So thank you so much for taking that time and effort in joining us for our report. We're really glad that you can join us. Speaking of us, now we've got a couple more attendees. I'll do a more formal introduction. So my name is Kayleigh Philps. I'm an analyst at Wood for Trees, and I've been working with our colleagues at Wood for Trees to put this State of the Sector report together. I'm joined by Owen and James. Owen, I'll pass over to you for an intro.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so I'm Senior Marketing Manager in the donor recruitment team at the RSPCA, and we're an animal welfare charity who rescue, rehabilitate and rehome animals. We work to prevent cruelty, promote kindness through education and advocacy as well. So I work in, as I say, the donor recruitment team, and we sit within the individual giving department. So we're responsible for bringing in new donors and income through financial gifts. So gifts like regular giving, one-off donations, sponsorship and lottery. Pass over to James.
Yeah, hi, I'm James. I'm a Senior Data and Selections Analyst at Air Ambulance Charity Kent, Surrey and Sussex. We're, as the name suggests, an air ambulance covering the south of England. We operate 3 helicopters, going over 3,000 missions every year to deliver specialised doctors, paramedics and treatment wherever they're needed, basically at any time. Costs us around £20 million per year to operate the service. And 88% of this income comes from voluntary donations and fundraising income. So we really rely very heavily on our supporters in order to be able to save lives and ensure the best outcomes for our patients. Yeah, we're a local charity really across the southeast, but yeah, we're really starting to think about using data to just try and make sure we maintain our focus on our supporters and they enable us to do the work that we can do.
Thanks, James, and thanks, Owen. 2 fab charities and 2 really great perspectives. We've got a really great session. What we've done is we've produced the State of the Sector report. We've pulled out some of the key findings and we'd love to share them with you now and get your opinion, James, and your take, Owen, on how these relate to your charities. And like I say, as we're going through, if you've got any comments, questions or queries, please pop them in the chat. Don't feel like you need to save them for the end if you don't want to. So I thought we'd start with a bit of a poll. Naomi, please fire the poll. And our first question is, how optimistic are you currently feeling about the charity sector as a whole and its ability to raise funds effectively? And I think this is always quite a good one to start with. I mean, we're talking about benchmarking, and it's pretty good to get a feel of how are people generally feeling about it. At Wood for Trees, we look very much at the data and the stats and the kind of hard evidence behind it, but it's always good to get the thoughts and feelings of people. And probably in the audience, you can see that those poll responses are coming in, and that's really interesting. We've got a lot of mixed responses, 44%. Next highest one, people are reasonably optimistic. A couple of people are a little bit pessimistic, 16% or so, and then a few sort of very pessimistic. Equally, again, though, a couple of extremely optimistic. We're seeing actually that quite nice bell curve. Don't want to get too statsy about it, but it's really interesting to get the thoughts and feelings of people and how that reflects in the real world. So taking that back to the State of the Sector report. Well, what are we actually seeing in the data? What we're seeing is our first takeaway here is that fundraising really does seem to be quite resilient. Every year since 2020, that overall income that charities are bringing in has steadily risen. And in fact, 2024 showed a 7% increase on income levels that were seen back in 2023. And this is amazing news. This is fantastic. And it's a really great celebration of everything that you're doing in charity is clearly having an impact and having an effect. And it's really lovely to see that reflected so clearly in the data. So that's our first takeaway. Fundraising is resilient. James, I'll move over to you. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, as has been the case for most charities, I would say the economic changes have had an impact on our services and on our supporters. And we've seen an increase in the cost of our services all across the board, from equipment and even aviation fuel, and obviously helicopters are quite expensive to begin with. So it costs us something like £56,000 per day to run the service. And to meet this, we have been fortunate enough to have, in the same way as the State of the Sector reports, we've also seen an income growth year on year in line with that, really. We had an exceptional year last year. And this was driven by our Bite for Life appeal, which gave us a fairly significant increase in our one-off donations and regular giving and legacy. But as you can sort of see from the chart on the screen, this has not been across the board. Growth hasn't been equal across all our different channels. And it stayed fairly flat in some of our significant areas like lottery and gaming. Community fundraising have not really seen that kind of increase. We have a very sort of diverse mix of income streams going on here, and so I think this really highlights the importance of maintaining a range of diverse income streams. Really, we've managed to do this, and we've managed to increase income year on year, even as different channels have, waxed and waned, I suppose. So really, my key takeaway from all of this is fundraising is resilient. Our supporters are resilient, and this kind of highlights the importance of maintaining a range of diverse income streams, and planning to develop and maintain them so that you can keep that resilience over a long time, and avoiding reliance on a single income stream where you may be significantly impacted should things change. Basically avoid reliance on single income streams, continue to recruit and maintain those, and diversity is key, I think. Owen, does that align with you?
Yeah, so we've seen similar to the report at the RSPCA. So we've also seen incremental growth, which is really brilliant news. But overall, the growth trend is starting to slow more recently for individual giving. So there's no kind of ignoring the turbulent economy and market conditions that are impacting people's disposable income and consumer confidence. And those challenges have had a knock-on impact on our fundraising performance in recent years. And partnered with kind of those rising acquisition costs as well, has led to kind of some challenges with areas like response rate and CPA and ROI. And it's not kind of isolated to one media channel. We've seen some channels be more resilient, and others start to kind of decline in performance. So it is clear there's a kind of decline in the ability to give to charities for many audience groups that are out there. And I think the changes in audience kind of giving behaviours are also reflected by what we're seeing in a higher ratio of donors deciding to give one-off donations as opposed to direct debits. So we've kind of seen that pendulum shift in favour of cash in a lot of campaigns. So again, that kind of suggests more people are concerned about their kind of medium to long-term finances, and when they want to give a kind of giving a one-off gift as opposed to a regular gift. But I think one real positive we have seen is that those who do give are still giving really generously. So we've seen average gifts across kind of regular giving and cash remain really strong throughout kind of the last couple of years, and we've even seen some average gift growth on some campaigns as well. I think a couple of kind of key takeaways on the next slide, and what we've kind of learned during the period. I think similar to how James mentioned, planning for volatility and balancing those channels that you're using for fundraising to avoid over-reliance on any one area, channel or product. So for example, if you're dependent in terms of paid digital on fundraising on Meta and you're seeing performance decline, is there any alternative channels that you could test instead, like YouTube? So yeah, really staying agile and moving budget away from underperforming channels is something that's allowed us to kind of continue with our income growth and find the best results and drive better long-term ROI. And I think also kind of reforecasting both in-year and long-term income as you go, I think has been really important for us. So that top-line growth doesn't mask falling net value in the long term. I think another kind of key takeaway for us is that recognizing audience giving behaviors has been really key. So we've leaned into regular giving on channels where it performs best and drives long-term ROI, but haven't pushed it at the expense of flexibility. So for many of us here, as I said, the one-off giving is all that they can do at the moment. So it's important to recognise that and make that as easy as possible for them, and recognise that repeat cash givers could potentially be future regular giving converters. So might start with a cash gift, or they might end up being repeat cash givers as well. So it's important to value them appropriately, and also capitalise on where you're performing well. So where are your successes? So for us, for an example, that's the average gift. If you're seeing strong average gifts or you want to drive up your average gift, recognise that donors that are giving are doing so generously, and try to test things like financial asks on creative journeys, behavioural techniques like anchoring or social proofing, just to really encourage that generosity from those who are responding.
Those are fab. Yeah, thank you, James, and thank you, Owen, as well. Really tangible takeaways from both of you, and particularly I get the sense that especially at RSPCA, you're sort of trying to meet donors where they are, especially around things like, everyone's probably bored of hearing the cost of living crisis, but we know these are true factors that are affecting people and how they give. And so, okay, well, if you can't commit to a regular gift, what about a cash donation, a one-off gift? You're still meeting your needs as a donor in terms of supporting a cause that you love, but you're also doing that in a sympathetic way for your finances. So I love that. So that's our first takeaway. Fundraising is resilient. Generally, things are pretty optimistic. Our takeaway number 2 is that supporter profiles remain stable. And what we're shown here on the screen are 2 views that come from the geodemographic measure of SONAR. In the Woodford Tree State of the Sector report, we always reference SONAR. As well, any users of the Insight Hub reporting suite that we provide, that will show SONAR as well as standard. We've got life stage on the left and affluence on the right. It's probably a good time now to set up our second poll of how familiar are people with geodemographic measures, just as a general rule. This can help our speakers sort of tailor how we position things and the level of detail we go into. So do you use geodemographic measures to better understand your supporters, ranging from yes all the time to not really or never? And just while those responses are coming in, if you're not familiar with geodems or geodemographic measures, they essentially work on the basis of where you live, to some extent determines what you look like from a profile perspective. And in the example of SONAR, other geodems are available. In terms of SONAR, we can see life stage and we can see affluence. So based on your postcode or your postcode area, do you look like you might be a singleton or a young family or a sort of standard family, all the way up to being retired? In terms of affluence as well, that ranges from those who are affluent down to those who are financially struggling. Just having a glance at those poll responses, it's really encouraging to see. About a third or so are saying, yes, I use these all the time, or I'm just starting to. That's really exciting. These are invaluable tools that we can use to enhance our data and just offer a bit of flavour and a bit of spice to understanding who our donors are. And what we're seeing here is that supporter profiles have remained pretty stable compared to what we were seeing back in 2023. And being quite frank, these are pretty typical views when we look at charities as a whole. So we tend to see lower volumes of singletons, young families, the kind of younger life stages, and much more prevalence for those mature families, empty nesters, and retired individuals. And generally, that's what we're seeing back in 2024 and in the year previously. Really similar picture for affluence as well. Again, we see that skew towards the more affluent postcodes, the more affluent individuals, and that intuitively makes a lot of sense as well. What I always find personally really interesting, though, is those in that struggling part. It always sort of surprises me at how high that is. And I think that's a really beautiful message, in that even those who perhaps don't have so much to give financially are still wanting to engage with charity. And it might be that, okay, that group, maybe they can't sign up to that RG gift, but how can they love and show their support for a charity in a different way, through perhaps non-financial actions? So that's what we're seeing here in terms of Sonar, that sort of shift back towards the older life stages and the increased affluence givers. James, let's come on to you next. How does that sort of compare with what you're seeing at KSS?
Yeah, thank you. We're just starting to use geodemographics here. We've not done a huge amount in the past, and so I can't really speak to any demographic shift. But as we're now starting to use Sonar, we recognise, I suppose, that it's going to be an extremely beneficial project to use this to understand our donors better, and it'll be beneficial right across our team. So all across fundraising and marketing communications, and just it touches on a whole lot of things that I think are very important to us in terms of how we relate to our supporters. We're extremely locally focused charity, and we obviously operate almost entirely out of our bases in Kent and Surrey, and as you can sort of see from the map on the screen, even within this area, our supporters are not particularly evenly distributed. We have strong historic ties in Kent, and to a lesser extent in Surrey around Red Hill, so we're really using Sonar as an opportunity for us to build up some profiles of our existing supporters, so that we can start to explore across the region and try and find some other areas that may be good for us to raise our brand awareness, and to engage with supporters who may not either be aware of the work that we do or just not really know us at all. Using these profiles is also going to give us an opportunity to develop our brand and our branding, and that kind of comes in a couple of different ways. There's sort of the key message to make us jump out to our supporters and make us really noticeable and visible, but we also want to understand what tone of voice to relate to our supporters in, which stories we should tell to each different audience in order to generate engagement and allow them to kind of understand us and engage with us if they want to. So there's a lot that we can do with this information, I think. So yeah, the next piece that we're going to work on as well is perhaps a little counterintuitively not to focus on supporters who look exactly like our existing supporters, but also to look for gaps. Where are there groups of people? It's a heavily populated area. I think there's more than 3 million people across the southeast. Where are the gaps in our knowledge? We know about our supporters, but who don't we know about? What opportunities are we missing, and what can we do to perhaps change that, so that we can bring more supporters on board, and we can just raise awareness of the important work that we do. Even if people don't want to support us, there's other things that we do, including outreach in the community, and things like we've got a Restart a Heart project, which is teaching CPR out in the community. And so this may give us an opportunity to find out good places where we can start to set up these kind of sessions, or share knowledge about us. So yeah, geodemographics, I think, are going to be key for us for the foreseeable future. In terms of segmenting and targeting our supporters, in terms of finding out what opportunities perhaps exist for us that we're not aware of, and also in terms of us shaping our message. How do we get our message out there into the community, and how do we engage with supporters perhaps in ways that we're not familiar with? Yeah. Does that tie up with you, Owen? Is that sort of a similar approach to what you've got?
Yeah, so we use a slightly different tool called Experian Mosaic. So it's a geodemographic profiling tool similar to what you use. It segments kind of all UK households into groups based on demographics. So things like lifestyle, income, media usage, and purchasing behaviour. So it's kind of there to help organisations understand who their audience are, who their audiences are, where to reach them, and kind of how they're likely to engage with your organisation. So at the RSPCA, we use this and it really helps us understand our supporter base and the market as well. It gives us a detailed view of the demographics, kind of life stage, media habits and response behaviours of our audiences. And we overlay that onto our CRM database to help inform our targeting and our product strategy and our content and much more. And more recently, we've also started to combine that with psychographic data. So we're not just looking at kind of who people are and where to find them and how they like to give, but also why they give to our cause as well. So this focuses on kind of donor motivations, values and attitudes that they share with the RSPCA and towards animal welfare and our cause. So we're now applying that insight to areas like our content strategy and our creative briefs and CRO as well. So that mix of kind of demographic and psychographic data has been really useful. And I think an example of where we found the geodem data for Mosaic particularly useful is recognising changing giving behaviours across particular paid media channels. So we can understand then the audience context behind performance and also look to test new channels if we need to. So one example is on our DRTV activity, which is one of our biggest drivers of regular givers. Some recent analysis showed that our standard linear DRTV activity continues to perform best with older, kind of rural, suburban segments. So there's one segment called senior security in the Mosaic tool, which is kind of older 65 plus retired homeowners living in suburban or semi-rural areas with stable finances. But what we did find is that we drive much less significant response from kind of middle life stage individuals with higher or lower incomes. So with that insight in mind, and also an ongoing kind of shift in viewing habits on TV, moving away from kind of traditional daytime and linear TV towards video on demand, we tested advertising on video on demand, and the Mosaic data that we've got from that shows that we're actually able to recruit a greater share of those middle life stage groups. So one of those groups is called City Prosperity. That's kind of high earning professionals in kind of between their 30s and 50s living in affluent kind of urban neighborhoods. So just an example there of kind of how we've looked at the data across different channels and what insight we're able to get to help inform our channel mix and any testing that we might need to do to kind of recruit new audiences in kind of changing times when giving behaviours are kind of fluctuating. And I think I had a couple of takeaways. So kind of for anyone looking to get started with geodems or get more value from them. So I think starting with the donor, not the tool, is a good idea. Kind of ask yourself what you need to know to improve your targeting or your stewardship or your creative, and then use kind of the geodemographic data to answer those questions. I think it's important to overlay the data with your CRM and also monitor on an ongoing basis. So don't just kind of map it, make a decision and move on, review it and use the data regularly to kind of monitor any shifts in changing behaviours to your campaigns. And also, if you can, pair it with kind of real human insight. We found that really beneficial, as I say, to pair it with psychographic data. So, for example, areas such as motivations for donating, shared values and beliefs with your organisation. I think you can get that data through kind of psychographic research for your donors, but also by analysing kind of qualitative interactions during the donation process. So we get a huge value from handwritten responses on cash mailings or from doing call listening and hearing the conversations that people are having with our fundraisers when they're making that donation and responding to our campaigns. So it really helps bring the segmentation to life and make it really meaningful and not just mechanical.
I think you've touched on a really good point there of bringing it to life. I know I've been in analysis for quite a while, and you can sometimes become blind to things and just kind of see the data and don't understand that the data are just a reflection for all this rich, wide behavior that happens before it. And so using tools like this can, I think, really help bring that data to life. But then if you're doing those additional things like your psychographic research, like looking at motivations, we'll touch on that a little bit shortly as well. And I love it when like charities send you things like writing on a bauble at Christmas, and then they can put that up in their centre. Helps you feel, I think, part of that community, and know that as a donor you're seen and you're being recognised and you're putting your own message out there to the charity. It's more of a relationship rather than just a one-way sort of thing. So yeah, I love that. Excellent takeaways from you both. Thank you so much. Moving on to the third takeaway from the State of the Sector report then, is around regular giving. And what we're seeing is that regular giving is still a very dominant method that charities supporters like to give by. So here we've got various financial years ranging from 2020 up to 2024. And we're looking at the proportion of income in each year that's come in through each of these product avenues. Now, this is a really top line version of products. Any fans of Insight Hub or the State of the Sector report will already know that the product categorization goes down into 3 levels of detail. This is level 1, it's pretty high level. And what we see in dark green there at the bottom is that back in 2024, regular giving was making up 38% of income seen within that year. And actually, for subsequent years as well, it's pretty similar. I've just seen a question in the chat. Where's this data coming from? Fab question. So we have a range of charities included in the benchmark. They range in terms of size, big to small. They range in terms of mission as well. So we're talking humanitarian, animal, overseas, quite a big range and mix. Thanks, Stuart, for posing that question. That's probably one we should have addressed right at the start. But it's good to know, and that's why we love taking these questions. So regular giving is big. And when I say regular giving, I mean all the standard RG things that we know and love. We're talking your direct debits, your standing orders, your payroll, sponsorship, membership, any subscriptions to things like magazines. In terms of income, they are still the big dominating factors. We see other things have changed a little bit in there as well. One-off donations, probably no surprise to anyone on the call that peaked back in 2020 when giving was quite reactive, shall we say. People were just keen to get those cash appeals out. And RG took a slight backseat. But really moving forwards, RG is still very dominant. Something that might differ though is James, your perspective from KSS. We've heard you say before already, RG isn't perhaps massive for you in terms of the standard things that we think about. Tell us about KSS.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Thank you. Yeah, regular giving is not dominant for us at all. We are, I think, a bit of an oddity amongst the charities who are involved in this, because around 80% of our income comes from lottery specifically, and this provides the core of our income and the core of our supporter base as well. This slide that you can see on the screen here is from our Bite for Life appeal last year, and I think it gives a good illustration of the array of different ways that we are supported, and that what we're really learning is that it's important not to just funnel supporters into a particular group and then leave them there. So on the left, we've got our supporters and how they're identified by their product, if you like, and how they were recruited in this appeal. And then on the right hand side, we can see how they actually responded to this particular appeal that this chart was from. And as you can see, there's a lot of crossover. You know, lottery supporters are responding to cash ask, warm cash supporters are responding to cold door drops, and people are responding to press and even radio. And so, you know, what this is kind of showing us, I think, and what's become clear to us is that we are it's really beneficial for us to develop a more integrated approach to our appeals than we were doing in the past. So this sort of idea of an integrated campaign, integrated appeal, raises the importance of the mix of different approaches that you're having sort of concurrently. So, you know, we've got radio and TV news. For our Christmas appeal, for example, we have cards, but we also, you know, ask for donations, and we have a raffle as well. You know, there's like this kind of multi-channel approach. You do end up contacting the same supporters with multiple different pieces in a lot of cases. You know, you can't help but send cold door drops to your warm supporters, for example. It's just going to happen. But we found that this kind of, I might be misusing this term, but this sort of network effect of having a lot of different approaches sort of raises our visibility, and at the moment we're finding that it's also raising the effectiveness of the campaign and increasing our income, because people are just becoming much more aware of us, and a lot more visible rather than receiving one single pack or hearing about us in one thing. We're visible across a bunch of different areas. We're also sort of focusing on our supporter mix. Again, going back to the sort of lottery thing, we've got a lot of supporters who do play the lottery, and although they're all unique and they have supporters in their own unique way, there's a broadly, they can be split into sort of prize-led and cause-led supporters, and we're now learning about those. This ties a little bit into the demographic work. We're trying to learn a bit more about it, because we think, you know, different supporter motivations are going to require a different approach. If half our lottery supporters are prize-led, that doesn't mean we stop sending them appeals, but it might mean that we perhaps think about how we're presenting ourselves differently, how we might engage with them in different ways. So you know, this kind of gives us a challenge, I suppose, to figure out how to better relate to our supporters, but it also means that we can appeal more broadly across a wider range of people, and I think that's very important. The other thing I want to talk about in this area is our sort of stewardship program, and this is also key to us, key to how we're presenting ourselves and how we're relating with our supporters. So we have an annual thankathon that we run in February every year, and we send it out to around 14,000 supporters. So this is roughly a fifth of our active supporter base, who are active May level supporter base, I should say, at any given time. And they all receive a handwritten card that's been written by one of our staff, or by our volunteers, or by our former patients, by doctors and paramedics who work for us and with us. And you know, we sort of make it like a party week where we sort of really celebrate getting those cards written and getting them out and sending them out. And we've found it's been very effective. We've done some analysis to see that, you know, people who do receive these cards, they are more likely to stay on board with us. They are more likely to relate to us. And, you know, we're not asking for any money with them or anything like that. It's just, I suppose, we want to really highlight how important our supporters are to us, and how, you know, while, you know, we have our service that we offer for our supporters, we also can't exist without them. And so we need to kind of remind ourselves, I suppose, organisationally, that is very important to us. You know, we want this to be a relationship, a two-way relationship. You know, they support us, and that enables us to go out to the community and work with them. And so, yeah, it's at the moment, this is working very well for us. So this sort of multi-channel approach, really. So sort of takeaways from this, I suppose, the ability to allow supporters to have the ability to change support where possible, because there is no right way to support us, but our most engaged supporters do respond to us in multiple ways, and we want to allow that. You know, we don't want to just pigeonhole someone into a particular lottery journey or a particular warm donor journey without making sure they have those other opportunities as well. Remember that all your fundraising works to raise awareness of your work and your brand as well. So even when supporters don't perhaps respond, that visibility for us is key. It really does help. You know, if supporters may receive a few pieces about us, but, you know, eventually we'll tip over if we can engage with them in the right way and show them how important we are within their community. Then that will, you know, encourage them to support us. And then the last thing, I suppose, and this is a little bit around the thankathon, is to keep things fresh. So try and surprise and delight your supporters. Obviously, it's much easier to keep existing supporters than recruit new ones. And we want to do both, but, you know, just try and, you know, mix it up. Make sure your supporters are not perhaps always receiving the same thing on the same regular beat in the same month. And yeah, it's working for us at the moment. It's you know, really opened things up. So definitely something I'd recommend. And yeah, over to you, Owen.
Thanks, James. I think we're slightly more aligned to what the data in the report was showing. So similar to that insight, we're an example of a charity where regular giving remains kind of the foundation of our individual giving strategy. It's our most established product and delivers the strongest long-term value and return on investment for us. So in terms of how we approach our acquisition, we take an always-on approach throughout the year across multiple paid digital channels like social, display, and PPC, as well as linear TV and video on demand as well, so that we're consistently bringing in new regular giving supporters throughout the calendar year. In addition to that, we also run 2 seasonal fundraising appeals, so one in summer and one in the winter. And both of those campaigns have really helped with our growth and become key moments in our fundraising calendar. We also kind of collaborate across the organisation. It's a fully integrated appeal. So we have multiple teams across paid media, including kind of retention and middle value as well, and also owned media, so our press and social engagement too. And that joined up approach really helps ensure kind of alignment across messaging, audiences, channels, to really help drive kind of share of voice and conversion as well. And I think the other thing that's helped with that growth is making our seasonal appeals kind of built around relevant and timely animal welfare issues. So, for example, our summer appeal focuses on the rise of reports in intentional harm to animals during the summer months. So that really underpins our kind of content for the appeal. And then we use insight to shape our creative and product focus. So in most paid channels, regular giving is the lead ask, but where we know cash works best, so like door drops, for example, that's when we'll lead with a cash ask. And then alongside that, in 2024, we recently relaunched kind of 2 other products to continue to diversify. So we relaunched our lottery and sponsorship acquisition as well. And we treat each product differently content-wise, so offering different acquisition hook and supporter journey, and catering to different audiences and interests across those different products. I think, as I touched on earlier, we also continue to kind of invest in understanding why people give. I think all of that insight really helps us refine our content and product strategy, and also adapt to shifting kind of audience preferences, and make sure we're recruiting the right supporters in the right products and the right channels with kind of the right products, really. And our audience targeting strategy is very underpinned by the geodem and psychographic insight that I talked through earlier. And we aim to kind of have priority mosaic and psychographic audience segments for each of those products to try and avoid overlap as much as we can.
That's amazing, Owen. Yeah, it's kind of the living embodiment of knowledge is power when it comes to understanding your supporters and taking data from those different points to better understand them, to tailor your messaging to them. That's something that you touched on as well, James, is like how you present yourself and how you try to engage and come across to donors, because some will be motivated by something, some will be motivated by other things. I don't know if you saw the chat as well, James, you got a lot of praise on your thankathon. And I think intuitively it makes so much sense as well. Like we all love to hear, oh, thank you for that. And so having the time and energy and effort to do that with your supporters, okay, maybe you can't see the immediate short-term ROI in the data, but you know it's creating that relationship and that environment for them to keep giving for longer. And when we look at things like long-term ROI, it must be there in the data for us to see. Also worth mentioning as well, I don't know if anyone in the audience was listening to Open's webinar last week. They did their own benchmarking and theirs was very sort of prevalent on regular giving as well. So coming back to that whole knowledge is power, it's really nice that we're seeing these things in different areas and from different speakers. I know, James, it's a little bit different at KSS in terms of your prevalence towards lottery. But as a sector as a whole, RG is really fundraising is resilient, but RG especially is still a core channel for our donors to give through. And you touched a bit about motivations, and I've snuck another poll question in here because I'd love to hear what our audience think. What are your opinions on supporter motivations? this is a little bit of a love child of mine, to be honest. I love donor psychology. I think knowledge is 100% power, and why would you not want to know more about why your donors give to your charity? I think it's one of those questions that if we can unlock that secret as to why someone is giving, then that's amazing. We can tailor our messaging accordingly, like you were saying, James. We can market better to our supporters, like you were saying, Owen. So this is fab, and we've got some really great love for donor psych as well. I'm jotting these down because this is incredible numbers. Thank you so very much. Okay, we're doing really good for time. Let's move on to our final key takeaway. Takeaway number 4 is that legacy income was 10% higher in 2024 than 2023. Again, referring back to Open's webinar last week, very similar findings, and that legacy giving is starting to become very, very prevalent. Probably we've all heard about the imminent transfer of wealth that's due to be coming within the next decade or so, and so we can't not mention this in our session as well. What we're looking at up on the screen is the really high value, high level product categories, that product level 1, and how the income in 2024 compares to that in 2023. And we can see really clearly legacy is that big standout. Trading is the next highest, but if we remember back in the takeaways from a couple of previous slides, trading income generally tends to be pretty low anyway, so we don't need to read too much into that one. But our main takeaway here is that legacy giving is on the increase, is on the rise. Perhaps are we starting to see that transfer of wealth coming in? And interestingly, what should charities be doing about this? I once heard someone say that the best time to work in legacy was 10 years ago because of the time it takes to sort of steward legacy gifts. But we can only do what we can do right now. So James, let's go to you. How is this comparing with what you're seeing in KSS?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, it does compare, yeah, pretty much exactly what we're seeing in KSS. I'm not sure we saw 10%, but we definitely have been seeing an increase in legacy income year on year. Our approach up until now has been very organic. We've barely promoted legacy. We've used Free Wills network and things like that, but that's been about it. But we're as with some of the other things I've talked about, we're starting to recognise how important this could be to us, and how we do need to put some effort into maintaining our sort of legacy program and making sure that it is appropriate for us and that it is working for us. We've recently recruited a new legacy manager. We've just recruited a new tribute fund, the Bluebell Tribute Fund, and we're trying to, as with all across our sort of supporters, we're trying to understand a little bit more about our legacy audience, I suppose. So to do that, we're working with Chase Index. We've got the survey results from taking part in that survey, and that's giving us some insights into how our supporters see legacy. And we're also using the SME and Forward analysis platform, which has been really useful, particularly around the sort of geographic side of things, because as mentioned, we're a very local charity. Kent, Surrey, Sussex is where we're focused, and there is a very specific audience in Kent, Surrey, and Sussex, and we really want to understand that. So yeah, we're interested in those sort of legacy giving trends in the southeast. We want to understand who are the people who are currently living in legacy, but also who might be in the future, because that's. It's a long-term. We need to come up with a long-term plan. Basically, I don't know that we necessarily have one right now, but we're in the process of actively developing it. And one of the other key things, I suppose, is we don't want to take legacy income for granted. From our slide way back, it's a significant chunk of our operational income comes from legacies every single year. So significant that if we were to not have it, or if it were to change, then that would actually, significantly impact our ability to deliver our services. So it's obviously very important, but it's also much more difficult to plan for, because it tends to be much lower numbers of individuals, and some half of those individuals who leave us a legacy we perhaps don't even know about. So we really want to understand that. A couple of areas that we're really focusing on, as well as the sort of demographic analysis, is the importance of legacy being seen as an organizational ask. So it doesn't just fall on the shoulders of the legacy team. It's something that we should all, across the entire fundraising team and marketing communications, and ideally across the whole organization, understand, what are legacies, how does the process work, even just so that they can give basic answers to an inquiry or know where to find the information. There is still a lot of misinformation around legacy. People don't know what's involved. They don't know how to do it. They think maybe it will end up costing them something. Having the answers to these and being able to present them in a straightforward way, I think, is very key, and just making sure that it's very much normalized across the whole team, so that it just becomes another part of our normal fundraising mix. It's not a specialist subject, I suppose. The other area, as has already been mentioned, the importance of the long-term view of our supporters. The stewardship and the thankathon, I suppose, comes into this. The stewardship of our supporters, so that on their journey with us, ultimately leads towards, we hope, them leaving a legacy gift to us, is important. And it takes a long time. You might be talking 10, 20, 30 more years before we will see legacies from some of our supporters. And we need to maintain that relationship throughout that time, and make sure that we bring them on the journey with us, and that they know how important that legacy might actually be to us in order to be able to deliver our services. So we're thinking about crafting our legacy message. How do we communicate with our supporters? Some of our supporters will see leaving a legacy almost as an investment. They'll probably want a pack that includes perhaps the real nitty-gritty. Where does their money go? What does it do? What's the impact that it will make? Whereas others perhaps want a much more simplified view of leaving a legacy. How straightforward is it to leave one? What's the process? Are there any drawbacks? That kind of thing, and just kind of keep it simple. And we know that we will have those different approaches within our supporter base, and we need to cater to all of them. So that's kind of where we are with legacy, really. So think of the long-term plan, play the long game, and just try and make sure that it is something that comes across organizationally as a whole, so we all understand it enough to be able to just have those conversations with people. I think is very important. So Owen,
Absolutely.
I'm going to hand over to you now.
Brilliant, thanks, James. So our legacy income has remained really strong, so similar to the report shows. We're really fortunate at the RSPCA to have such generous pledges supporting our animal welfare work, and similar to you, James, we couldn't do the work we do without them. I think in terms of kind of going back to the report, I think historically legacy income tends to be slightly less immediately affected by short-term economic or market turbulence compared to individual giving. And that's kind of reflected in our own fundraising at the RSPCA at the moment. I also completely agree with your point, James, in terms of making legacy an organisational focus, not just kind of confined to one team. I think an example of that at the RSPCA is the brilliant collaboration between our legacy team and other fundraising teams, looking for opportunities to introduce legacy conversions and conversations at meaningful moments in the supporter journey, to try and help increase those gifting wheel inquiries, and doing so in a way that kind of feels natural and timely and respectful as well.
Thanks, Owen, and thank you, James, as well. That's like really succinctly put. And a couple of takeaways that I wrote down from that was, for me, it's almost still coming back to understanding your donors and knowing what they want, and catering your messaging accordingly. So if they do want that detail, then they've got that detail. But if that's going to put them off and they think, no, just send me the kind of top line information, the summary, what I need to do. So again, for me, it's coming back to that sort of knowledge is power, particularly when the stakes are so high, like legacy giving, where we know a lot of charities rely on legacy giving as a big portion of their income. And also touched on was the idea of hidden pledges as well. So I know analysis that I've done in the past, it's approximately half or so legacy income comes from donors who supposedly are not on the database at all, or if they are, they're just not flagged as pledges, which is mind-blowing, that for me anyway, that you would be so invested in leaving a gift in your will, and yet you wouldn't let the charity know. So we never know who's there sat on our database who is going to leave us a gift of some sort, but we just don't know who they are necessarily. Beautiful point to end on. And then we come to our final slides then. So thank you very, very much for joining us and to hear about our 4 takeaways. Just as a reminder, they are resilience. The charity sector is really resilient. We spoke a bit about the geodems, we heard about Sonar, we heard about Mosaic, and that profile of generally older supporters and generally a little bit more affluent or wealthy supporters. RG is still a big income stream, although not necessarily for all charities, KSS being a really fab example of that. And then legacy income is on the rise as well, and that's a really important one. I thought what would be nice to finish with, especially given the recency effect for any psych fans out there, is any final message that you would like to leave our audience with, James and Owen. And just while you're kind of thinking about that, I'll go first with mine, because it's never fair when you pose a question to someone and then you just leave the mic hanging. So my key takeaway from getting close to this data is to understand your supporters. And I think that's really easily said, but it's really difficult to do. Something that we're seeing more about in the charity space is around fundraiser or donor motivations. So if you can understand why people are giving, that's incredibly rich information that you can then use to better appeal, better understand, better engage with your donors, because you know why they're engaging with you in the first place. So that's my key takeaway. James, shall I pass the baton over to you?
Absolutely. So yeah, there's a sort of couple of points I want to sort of leave as a final takeaway, really. So all of what I've talked about, all the different projects that I've talked about, and our different approach and everything has been very much a whole team effort here at KSS. So yeah, I just want to sort of reiterate that, really, as a, work as a team, learn, use the tools that are available, check your results, avoid those sort of organizational silos. And I think sort of finally, the real key, I think, for us is to remember to keep your supporters at the very heart of what you do, and then you can understand them more, and you can bring them with you on this journey as you grow and hopefully grow and develop as a charity.
I love that so much. That sounds so wise as well, coming from you, of keep your donors at the heart. I really love that. Owen, how about you?
Yeah, so I think as you touched on, I think the sector's shown incredible resilience, so we should definitely celebrate that. And I think to keep moving forward, it's, as you say, making good use of audience data and being agile with fundraising approaches, and also just being really focused on long-term value, and also, just as importantly, working together across different teams and disciplines within the charities, because I think no one channel or product kind of succeeds in isolation. I think all of the data that we've kind of touched on today is about a mix of products, mix of channels, and really getting to understand your data to inform that decision making.
That's beautiful. I love that as well. And like working together with other teams. Again, I think maybe in a lot of cases is easier said than done. But I think if we've got other teams that we can work with, it makes sense. And especially from a donor's perspective, they don't think about, I am a cash giver. They think about, oh, I support RSPCA or KSS. And again, that's coming back to your point earlier, James, around legacy giving or legacy marketing should be thought of at an organisation-wide level. Again, because thinking empathetically from the donor's point of view, that's how they see things, is the organisation and not the specific channel or product that they've come in on. I love that very much. We have had a couple of questions come in the Q&A, which I don't think we'll have time to address properly. So what we should do is take them away and answer them a bit more thoroughly, and then send some post comms after the event. But thank you so very much for posting them in. Thank you for all your time and your energy for joining. I think our energy is one of our most important things, and the fact that you've decided and chosen to engage in our talk is really special. So thank you so much. Thank you to Owen, thank you to James, and then thank you to Lewis and Naomi and Dom as well, who are part of the Wood for Trees team, who without their help we can't put these webinars on. So thank you so very much. Owen and James, if anyone wants to get in touch with you direct, is that okay? Can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I say we'll circulate some Q&As as well, which would be hopefully really useful for everyone that's attended.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as you say, yeah, happy to answer any questions. And if anyone wants to get in touch, that's also absolutely fine.
That's perfect. What a nice note to end on. Well, thank you so very much for joining. It's been lovely to have you here. We hope you enjoyed the session, and we will end it here. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.